Hey everybody, this is John Fenn outside of beautiful Kristiansand, Norway, and staying with some good friends here for the next few days. John Fenn, supernaturalhousechurch.org if you want the website. Today, coming to you from Norway, I want to share just briefly about a visitation that I had some years ago, and it changed my life, and then I need a refresher course, and I want to share that little refresher course as well. And the visitation was that the Lord had actually, Barbara and I had been praying one night, and she had gone to bed, and then the Lord came. Basically, my eyes were open to the spirit realm. And when that happens, what I mean by that is that I can see in the natural realm, my eyes are wide open, but also I can suddenly see in His realm. And it's like an overlay. So I see the natural realm, and I see in His realm as well. It's very similar to when Elisha's servant was scared because they were surrounded by the army. And I believe it's 2 Kings 6. And Elisha says, Lord, open up his eyes so that he can see. And so, in fact, that's what the Lord did. And suddenly the servant could see not only in the natural, but he suddenly saw the army of God surrounding them. So that's kind of like what it is for me. The Lord opens up my eyes to His realm. And so the Lord came, and actually I had been praying and been seated down onto our sofa, and we had our sofa and love seat set in an L shape. And the Lord, in the Spirit, came and sat down on the love seat. Now, between us, at the joint where the L meets, the sofa and the love seat met to form that L, was a table. And on that table were National Geographic magazines and other magazines that we had around, related to the house and decoration and all sorts of stuff like that. And the Lord sat down, and one of the things He did, now, in the natural, you would just see me sitting on the sofa. And in the Spirit, you would just see a stack of magazines. But He reached His hand over and flipped through the pages of the top magazine, which was a National Geographic. Now, in the natural, you wouldn't see anything. You'd just see a stack of magazines. But in the Spirit, that's what He was doing. And He flipped through it, and I knew that the Lord was just reading all that. I knew He was taking in all that information. And so there was a moment of pause where he flipped through that, and then he kind of put his head down a little bit, just kind of looked down a little. And there was a moment of hesitation there and silence between us. It was a little uncomfortable, frankly. And finally I said, Lord, does this offend You? And he looked up at me and he said this. He said, it's not whether it offends me or not. It's that there's no life in these words. And that the fact that there was no life there. And I was reminded recently of a similar thing. And here's my reminder, 14 years later. This first visitation happened in maybe 1990 and about 2004. It was after we'd started our house church network. And usually the father would make comment about news items, or I'd ask him, I'd hear a headline or something, and I'd say, Father, what do you think about this, or where's this going? And oftentimes the father would respond, but I went through a couple months where I hadn't heard of the father. He'd made no comment or anything else for a couple months. And so finally one day I said, Father, I asked you about some of this stuff, but I'm not hearing any comment from you. And he said this to me. He said, why should I talk to you? You get all your news from Fox. And that was a kind of like I had to learn my lesson again. The first one there in about 1990 when the Lord said there's no life in these pages, and then 14 years later when He said, why should I talk to you? You get all your news from Fox. And it reminded me that here recently I was just thinking about the fact that there are so many voices out there in the world, and yet in 1 Corinthians 14:10, for instance, Paul said there are many voices in this world, and none of them, I suppose, is without significance. And so there's an acknowledgement that there are voices out there. Even Jesus was connected in His day to the political things that were going on, the events around Him. He knew His history. He knew what was going on around Him. He called Herod, you sly fox. He knew the political intrigue, and he was connected to His day. But at the same time, Jesus said in John chapter 10 that His sheep will hear His voice, and another they will not follow. So the balance of Paul saying there are many voices in this world has to be countered by the fact that Jesus said, my sheep know my voice, and another they will not follow. And I want to bring it back down to life. Are the things that we are consuming in our eyes and our ears full of life, or are they just information? Are they dead? And when Jesus had done that in that visitation, I had so wished I had a Christian magazine on that table, but there wasn't a Christian magazine on the table at all. And He just said, it's not whether it offends me or not, it's that there's no life in these pages. And so for me, it's like, okay, we need to have life, and websites and news programs and things like that that don't really impart life to us, don't hit our spirits, then we have to regulate those. We have to be disciplined in those, and maybe not include them as an automatic. And I'm convinced that if we will go to the Father first, if we'll go to the Lord and say, what do you think about this? Do you have an opinion about this? What do you think? That the Lord will then start talking to us more. But, it's kind of like, as you seek him, you will find him. And as Jesus said in Mark chapter 4, maybe somewhere around verse 32 or so, he said, the measure that you measure it out is how it's measured back to you again. And so, in other words, the value that you place on the things of him are the way it's measured back to you again. So how do we esteem the voice of the Lord? And I think a lot of times Christians they don't know his voice, and so they're very quick to swallow manipulation and lies and things like that don't really mean anything. In fact, they'll see one verse out of the Bible and they don't realize it's out of context, and they don't know enough to check the Holy Spirit within. They don't know how to check with the Lord within, Christ in them, the hope of glory, to measure what somebody says against the Spirit of truth within them. And one of the things that the Lord is doing in this day is he's training people how to hear his voice within, and how to know when someone expresses an opinion or a news headline blares out at us, or all the voices that are out there scream at us, that we will instantly in our minds, just in an instant, check down inside, change our attention to what's down inside in our spirit man, and just kind of register saying, okay, Father, what do you think about this? Okay, Lord, what do you think about this? And we'll see how it fits against the Spirit of truth. Does the Spirit of truth acknowledge and bear witness that it is the truth, whatever is coming in those eyes and ears? And so, anyway, just those thoughts, those things about look for things with life in them, and that which doesn't have life, don't worry. If it's not complementary to the shepherd's voice, then we have no business following it. So be careful the websites, be careful the news and the TV and the movies and everything else of all those voices, and really just make a change of your heart and just say the one voice that I want to hear more than any other is the voice of the Lord. And I won't be satisfied until I'm hearing his voice and his reflections and his opinion on world events, and most importantly on my life and my events. All right, God bless you. I'll be back in the U.S. next week. For the next few days, I'm in and around Kristiansand, Norway. It's beautiful. Seeing some wonderful friends and meeting some new ones as well. God bless.